Let's look at decimals. So decimals made up of three parts. The part to the left, which is the whole number part, the decimal point itself, and then those numbers that are to the right of that decimal point, which are all numbers that are all values that are less than a whole number. And we read it as such. We read it as 258.237195. So we read the whole numbers as we ordinarily would. We'd say point for the decimal point, and then we read each of the digits in turn. If you look at each of these digits, we'll just have a look quickly at this chart, and we can see that each of them has a value attached to it. We know that the first one here is the tenths, and then they go to the hundredths, etc., etc., thousands, tens of thousands, millions, etc. So if we take one of these values, let's take the 2 here, and let's explore that a little bit further. Okay, so let's look at this 0.2. So the 0.2 is in the tenths column, so it's 2 tenths, and we can express that as the fraction 2 tenths, 2 over 10. Now using this fraction 2 over 10, we can see that we could equally make that an equivalent fraction, so 20 over 100, and that would then give us the ability to make a percentage. So in this case it would be 20%. If we look then at a combination of these numbers up here, so let's look at, say, the first two here. So if we look at the 0.23 is the same as 23 over 100, and it's made up of 2 tenths and 3 hundredths. The important thing to remember when you're writing these words down is that the original word, say 100 or 10, still exists. You're putting a THS on the end of that. So make sure you're not saying hundredths and leaving the D out of that in your mind, because the D is definitely 100 with THS at the end of it. Same for thousandths. The D at the end of thousands is also there. If we look then at 23 over 100, we can then look at that as before with the 0.2. So 23 over 100 would then give us a percentage of 23%. Let's look now at including more digits from here. Okay, so 0.237 is equal to 237 over 1,000. So we can see that we have tenths, hundredths, thousandths. And then we can look at that 237 over 1,000, it becomes 2 tenths and 3 hundredths and 7 thousandths. And then thinking about it as a percentage, 237 over 1,000 as a percentage, well, we've got to get this back to 100. So this has become 23.7 over 100. So you're dividing both by 10, and that would give us 23.7%. Okay. And then we can think logically about that now. So if 23.7 is 23.7%, then 23.71 and 23.7195, etc., as we would go in order to convert those into percentages. As long as you're aware of the names of each of these, tenths, hundreds, thousands, millions, etc., by the chart we looked at earlier, then that sort of guides you towards how to write them as fractions.